Welcome to our lovely future humans, our 5D collective, to those who are steady, to those who are sovereign, to those who know about how life has no fixed purpose, and that's the point, or is it? If you didn't tune into the short, you don't know what I had to say for the answer to the question, what's the purpose of life? So I'm going to read that to you first, then I'm going to go to the Reddit group answers that I gave and chime in with that. But in the meantime, those who are tuning in from Spotify and elsewhere, that's for you all who aren't on YouTube, so you don't get a hold of the shorts. And FYI, for those of you who continue to return, there will be times where I'll do it this way, where I read to you a gist of the answer, and then we'll review the actual answers. Not that it matters, but I do want you to hear, because there's a lot behind the answer to that question, the purpose of life. It begins with, it's something not that you find. So purpose isn't something you find. It's something you feel when you're regulated enough to experience life fully. And as I shared in the short, but again, those of you who didn't, the book, I forget to read for those of you who can't see me, Restorative Embodiment and Resilience by Alan Fogel, PhD, a good one to look into. And the left brain speaks, the right brain laughs. This is neuroscience, Ransom Stevens, PhD. Also lovely Dr. Daniel Siegel with his personality and wholeness in therapy, but I don't know how much you enjoy reading. And well, this is for those of you who are curious about physics. I haven't even began this, but he has the answer to everything about life. It's amazing. So we all have a left and we all have a right. And that's why I understand when people will be uncomfortable with what they heard from the short or with potentially what they will hear here. In the meantime, FYI, my guide, God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, then I'm expanded to Akashani Mamundi, Buddha, and I. We always have a joke going on behind the scenes. That's how a channeler downloader can tell you. Galactic future beings, you name it. Woo-woo pseudoscience lady, because I appreciate science. I am both spiritual and religious, but I'm not accepted by all, especially those who model epistemic laziness. And like I got told, so sorry Maria, you're rejected, and that's because God doesn't need science, to which I answered nothing, but wait for it, because I did share with you all about a religious man, Catholic priest, who's the reason why we know about the Big Bang, or any something like that. So let me pause and continue to read to you all. So the purpose of life, not something you find, something you'll feel when you're regulated enough to experience life fully. In fact, it would be the whole sense of self that you own, in the words of lovely Dr. Daniel Siegel, and it's your integrated brain. So you have self-regulation, complete capacity. So your child parts are yours, and you don't have inner critic, outer critic, and you know your good habits and bad habits, and it's easy for you to work with your emotional plane, including your affective realism, and your mental plane, which instead unembodied leaders don't know how to do. So emotionally immature people, all of them, with relationships and in leadership, quote unquote, positions, so in companies, they want validation, they then get defensiveness, they create hostile environments, and they don't have the capacity, we talked about it, to apologize, because they don't know how to navigate their own nervous system. So they are actively hanging out with the people who, they're there, Maria, sorry you're rejected, and those people, I won't insult them because my mother taught me manners. Also, God doesn't reject me. And if you're curious about my relationship with God, I have a little chapter that talks about me in the book The Ways to God, co-author alongside another 9 spiritual authors. God is discerning quantumist love, and in 14 pages you hear some about what I have to say in my good relationship. So it's sad that religion and spiritual ones don't bring us all together, but that's the part that Dalai Lama did make a call to all to come together. Science has nothing negative unless they're the ones who decide to, I showed this book, I think, or maybe I didn't, but the ones who want to battle each other, that's where it's a left and not a left and a right. When you have two sides working, you use the conciliance approach. That's why the integrated brain, the 5D collective, welcome aboard. So people don't struggle with life's purpose, they struggle with their state, the nervous system state, and their mind. There is no single purpose to life. Here's our 8th and 9th chakra and mastery for the spiritual ones of you. And that's why people who lack a steady self-image and nervous system sovereignty will feel lost, overwhelmed, helpless, and hopeless. They don't master their 8th or 9th chakra. Even the spiritual bypassers, they think they are mastering stuff, but you'll notice because they won't actually be doing that which is called forgive. Forgive, for they do not know. Blessed are those who believe without seeing. Don't cast the stones. None of us are saviors or martyrs superiors. Those who are spiritual bypassers and somatic bypassers tend to think that their group is more special than another group. They tend to forget that God's perfect and that we're not, and that all are welcome. And the ones who play God, I have news for them. The actual faithful ones who hear God's timbre are like, yeah, we know what he wants for us to get along. The fact that you keep narratives alive of evil make me think you don't know neuroscientist Patrick McNamara, and you obviously don't know science, not you, but the people who are epistemic lazy, or don't believe in science. Which is like, oh, so you don't believe in the embodied brain. Okay, I mean, I guess they don't believe in the moon anymore anyways. Okay, so that's why they get the narratives of validation. Flat earthers are around for a reason. It's not because of people are creative. Concealance approach. I got called a hypocrite because I bring all things in. So people who have half a brain working is how I put it. Although it always works two sides, but they don't actually emotionally mature. Therefore, their ego talks over you while you're talking. And their argumentation falls flat. But anyways, the point is they get defensive and you just leave them talk so you can get out of that room. So purpose emerges from regulated, embodied living because you have the sense of self. With the ego, it's your friends, you're doing great, you forgive, like, again, whether you follow Jesus or not, Holy Spirit. And as for those who don't want to hear about the explanation, it's sad to say because, the polyvagal lens makes it very clear, as does Stephen Porges, what shame does. It actively rejects that which is its own healing. That's not because of anything except for what is called self-sabotage, non-bilaterally integrated brain people. So you can't really make fun of weak ones to the point of thinking of them as monstrous because they're not strategic. They're always going to be defensive, in survivorship bias, and know nothing except for their blind spots. But I digress. So the purpose of life, it emerges when you are yourself, and that's without a mask. And if this makes anyone uncomfortable, I do understand why. You don't need the answer. You need the capacity to live the question. Because our mind has human secondary consciousness, this sends the mind into that which is called an infinity and beyond of questions. And if you feel helpless and hopeless, which is where that default mode network comes into the mix, which is where those who lack nervous system sovereignty, and also we're all motivated differently. So the part of, if you're not your own emotionally mature person yet, you will feel that you don't like an answer of, it could be A, Z, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, P, and those who think that religious, spiritual, and science can't belong together don't understand how epistemic curious and disciplined and love-based leadership, the ones who have healthy fear work. Intellect works really great when it's logical. So you accept all because you know how expertise works. And also they can't actually disprove, science can't disprove God. They can give us their explanations. People who get defensive about it and call those of us who are open to all pieces of information names and say we betray. No, those who betray are those who get arrogant, those who maintain ignorance, and those who, thanks to them, I get to hear, sorry, Maria, you are rejected. And when I told people about demonic possession and was made fun of, and they're looking at me because they actively are still upset at being whatever it was that happened to them when they explained what they saw. And I said, I know what you're talking about. I know neuroscientist Patrick McNamara, all these smart scientists, and I know how to explain to you how our brothers and sisters, all of them are still God's children. They have a soul, they have a heart. They actively can be healed, and the scientists have figured it out. The ones who are out there with their knowledge of how humanity integrated with restored embodiment can achieve their A game. And those are the people who will be back, because we also don't expect to ever get an apology from anyone who lacks the capacity to know what their life's purpose is, because they lack the capacity to know themselves, which is a really sad story, because wow, I'd love to meet their child, because the essence of them is beautiful, like their grown-up version. But when you stay bitter, anyways, control is their comfort. So I'm going to leave that to another story another time. What I want to close us out with, as I interjected with a lot of different thoughts. So if you want to hear the other short, that's a 3-minute, go for it. It's on YouTube for those of you who are listening to me. And I wanted to find the answer from Reddit. That way you can hear other aspects that I looked at. And so for the life, not this one, here we go. What's the purpose of life? It's a question that gets asked and explored by humanity thanks to us humans having secondary consciousness in addition to our primary consciousness. The field of psychology calls it a human dilemma, but for those of us who enjoy life, it's not a dilemma. I've never considered it a dilemma. It's a condition. Because again, you have that nervous system sovereignty, you have a sense of self, you understand the query, and you understand that you come with whatever you come with. I come with faith in God. Science doesn't make me not believe, and actively I love more every day thanks to you, stress, and thanks to my capacity to understand why people can get uncomfortable with conversations. Doesn't make me want to maintain ignorance or be epistemically lazy, and I love using words even if I use them wrong, by the way, because that's my 3-year-old. So the people who don't like these answers, again, I can't do anything because they don't want to go and get their window of tolerance to somebody who can help them expand it. So the answer varies depending on if you're talking to someone who is living life in a restorative embodiment or a dysregulated one. And as Bessel van der Kolk has pointed out in interviews, they won't know the difference. But those who do know, it's okay. We can't tell you go to therapy because that's actually something I was told by all the ones that I learned from. You can't. They have to want it. And so that's where it's at. When you have a steady self-image, when you're grounded in aliveness and anchored in ventral energy, that means you're using your social engagement system. You experience life and uncertainties with eustress instead of distress. This makes life feel easy, even when it's hard or scary, or like my panic attacks, the whole twin flame and flame stuff, any channel, download all of it. I've seen plenty of things, don't worry, but they're not something that can harm you. So that's where your belief system. And see, for me, it was easy because being raised by good Christian Catholic catechists, all my brothers and sisters are souls and angels. That's it. And once I became a mystic, I was like, well, I already knew there was no Lucifer monster, as I met a bunch of cowards throughout my years. And once I knew we're all just a big ball of energy, well, that makes sense. We're all the same frequency, but not those who don't want to achieve that which is their optimal potential. But that's their single free will choice. You can't make them. The nervous system. You can't make someone want to go and take ownership of themselves, wait till they're done healing, and then actively work to maintain healing because their trauma stuff will still come up. So we all know that by now. It's become quite second. No, everybody's talking about it. I see a lot of cheap content out there for people who want the easy way out instead of actually taking themselves seriously. And there are those who will say you can do it by yourself, and I'm going to say, if you have a higher self in the leave and an integrated bilateral vertical raw brain, yes. But if, on the other hand, as I've noticed, spiritual bypassers and somatic bypassers do, they're not actually doing that which is what they could. But I have an answer for that, different soul age group. So I can give you an answer for pretty much anything when it comes to science and spirituality and the whole religious stuff and how people can find their purpose in life from within them. So personally, I can think easily, I can cry easily, I can get upset easily. The world can make me angry, people, but I won't suffer it. And actually, people just irritate me, not angry, because I'm not their mother, I'm not their father, I'm not going to correct them, and I'm not God. And you better bet, I already know God. He's discerning, equanimous love. And those who want to use the books and tell us that we're rejected again, they can use their books. The ones who follow them, I can't say anything, because I know what Peter Pan is and what the Lost Boys are and what Wendy is. And so you, again, understand what emotionally immature people do, not only in relationships, but also as leaders. They carry each other around, they backstab, lie, they do a bunch of stuff that I saw when I was a kid. Now I still see it as a grown-up. Now I have an explanation for you, which is really something amazing to be able to move into the future, by the way. So personally, for me, the purpose of life is a fulfilling one, and making a difference, however little or big I can. Life's purpose is to leave the earth, making it better than yesterday for the future generations that will be here when I'm gone. So I'm sharing with you my subjective answer to the Reddit thing. I want to help my loved ones and overall society achieve fulfillment too, even though I can't make it happen without them wanting fulfillment and taking ownership of their own body, brain, mind, self. You can't make someone want nervous system sovereignty. So I know I can't make it better for all people, and I can't make all the fighting and horrors that still take place in our world stop. But I can, with my life's purpose, make a difference and connect to others who also want to do the same, which is what we all do. Thank you, Internet, for connecting us to like-hearted people who also are like-minded with epistemic curiosity. So you expand your knowledge. You don't actually get lazy of learning. You don't think you know everything. You know a little bit, and then you keep learning, and you don't unlearn things just because they told it to us with biases and other things. We understand that our ancestors made mistakes because they were not knowledgeable. Understanding the lack of capacity to know things, and we keep building knowledge, carrying it into the future, versus the ones who think we're going ignorant, which we're not. Those are all people who don't notice that the only ones who think humanity is failing miserably are the same ones who don't have their best foot forward and who are upset, besides angry, scared, and bitter, and a lot more, and charged, emotionally immature. They're not choosing to mature themselves. So you can't, again, make someone want nervous system sovereignty. Even if they go to therapy, you have to say, I want to do it, I want to know. And you say, okay, well, that was that one choice. So you leave it. But for example, I say, me posting in the Reddit group gives me purpose. And maybe with some words, I'll make a difference, a positive impact in other people's lives. If that happens, that difference will trickle down to more people and more, and I can have a cascade effect. That's purpose. Okay, so when we understand that we have purpose, again, from within you, you don't have self-loathing, gut wrench, torn apart. You don't have this midline that's consistently seeking, that longing, that those who don't know how to give it to the human, I bring the human elements to spiritual and spirituality, your nervous system, your integrated brain, yourself. All of you, whatever age you are, that's the version you are, and all your child parts, they are charged from 0 to 16. We all have them, but not all of us have fragmentation, which is different. And so people who learn about the terms but don't notice, are you growing happier every year? And if you are, great, but really it's from the body. If you instead, so neuroception, Dr. Amy Apigan, she does a great job at explaining it. That's why we do good resilience, some do bad resilience. And knowing the difference, I can know the difference because I'm self-aware, accountable, and regulating. I've noticed people who don't notice the difference, they're in the emotional intelligence group complaining about expanding their window of welcome. So they're not emotionally intelligent. They're just in a group where they want to belong, and it's you want to first harness your embodied brain. Otherwise, you're not going to increase that intelligence, and it's also not a fancy medal of anything. So with resilience, emotional intelligence, stamina grows because you're grounded and you're alive. That's the aliveness that Bethany, Brandon, and Ruflanius have talked to me about. It's amazing. So as you grow, it's why you'll catch yourself with the charges. You're like, okay, my shoe's growing tight. I'm not growing more blissful. That's how it works when you are in the Enlightenment Soul Age group, or if you just want to use human words, restorative embodiment and creating resilience. And so you continue to expand. And that's also, by the way, primary consciousness and biology, our body. So that nutritionist diet that I'm doing, perfection. And that's why when you are able to self-regulate and you treat your body the way it's made, because while I will love to use my thinking, my secondary consciousness rules differently. My body is a clock, like that biology stuff, but not in a way of me having to get old, by the way. But I'm just saying it has a rhythm that is consistent, and we'll talk about that some other time. But you can know enough about something to think you're right and not enough to know you're wrong. And when I look at our complex systems, the embodied brain, and when you are a person who has that self-regulation, and then you're doing the appropriate eating and the appropriate movement, life gets easier and easier. I'm 46, okay? So I'm saying some people think we don't need science or we don't need doctors. We don't need. What we want are more individuals who know, good professionals, enlighten you. They're humble. They don't have arrogance. They don't act like they have a perfect solution for everything. And in fact, they respect their colleagues and they stay curious about their topic. In fact, they also want to bring in more subject matters into the mix because they're smart enough to understand that it's not just one note. So those who instead want certainty, that's the whole point. Unhealthy fear wants a fixed certainty. People who don't like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are destabilized by more, but it's really, I should talk about left and right, non-bilaterally integrated brain people, because it's really about the left at a certain point just takes over that dark sides of neuroplasticity. So at the end, let me conclude. So in this case, resilience, emotional intelligence, stamina grows, life has purpose because You choose that it has that purpose. Again, it's your thought, it's your feeling. And by the way, we have loved ones, so you automatically have purpose. And some people say they don't. They can have purpose by creating that community. But if you're not whole inside, this is where there's a lot more going on. Your body, brain, mind, self are your oyster, and that's what our subjective reality is made of. And those objective truths, we know what they are. And in fact, when you're stable, you're not fighting about them. You understand them, and you continue looking into it, and then you continue enjoying that there's knowledgeable experts out there, and you hope there's more of the experts who are humble and less of the other ones, but it's because they're annoying to be around. So in my case, thanks to my human secondary consciousness, each day when I wake up and take my first breath, my life has purpose because I say so and feel so. I take actions that can create a tangible positive effect, no matter how small. And every day I wake up and do it again until I die. For people who are dysregulated with an unstable self-image, life is lived in survival mode with survivalship bias. I heard this term, and that's accurate. They're just completely... unfortunately, their body suffers it. They can have validation in group and be out at sky 11, and that's the part of where just because they will have found people that resonated with them, that's how they're going to go. That's how they're going to go. I know they can do even better, but this is where you don't convince someone of anything. So their suffering is going to be noticeable to those of us who see that their life's purpose, one, it will sound very different. They will have charges. They will have, teams against each other. It's suffering consistently. The whole life is suffering. I would say lower toroidal field is a term that comes to mind that I heard some of the mystics talking about. So everything feels hard. Thinking is hard. Rumination is the go-to. Thought processes are used in ways that, sure, they journal. They think they're doing it right, but their body isn't showing the signs. In fact, there'll be motivation and mindset groups. They'll say, how do you escape reality? But not with drugs or alcohol. What's the healthy way? You're escaping reality. All of it's unhealthy. I just found out you don't know how to handle your emotional plane and you're overwhelmed, which makes sense. But what you need besides a hug is a good therapist so that you can choose to work with your mind. And then eventually you're 0-1-year-old and make peace with it. Either you will get up every day and continue that, or I would do no, and that's your choice. And then you have the groupies. So this stress brings a low energy that makes the body not stronger, makes it weaker. So it's actually, again, validation loops, sharing the same narrative and continuing to dysregulate together. Doesn't sound to me like that's very... People say, how do you love? Well, you love by sharing the truth. The truth is a bunch of different pieces of information that some people won't believe in, even if they're given the information in a more coherent, consistent, whatever way than what I am. You don't convince people to do that which is in their best interest, because guess what I have? I want to do diet. We're doing the diet. I have a 3-year-old in my brain too, so that's that control thing. Okay, so take ownership, harmonize body, brain, mind, self, and life's purpose will be meaningful without needing an answer to the question, what's the purpose, the point of life? And that will be because you care and aren't overwhelmed by it. So for my lovely self-reflective self-leaders, those of you who are out there, journaling, mindset, micro habits, all that great stuff, working with emotional intelligence and moving from activation to steadiness, in case you didn't hear the journal prompt of the week, write down if you're curious to have it, and check out PayHip if you want more. There's bundles with journal prompts, and there's bundles with mindset practices, and subscribe to Substack. We're going to have some paid subscriber content at a specific point in time. What happens when I increase flexibility as I soften? If you're still working with control, or resistance, emotional charges, or fill in the blank with what you're learning to be more flexible with at this time. And thanks for stopping by. Let others know about IHP. In the meantime, for the religious part, I actually had something that I was going to share with you all, but I'll wait till another episode. And again, thanks for stopping by. Have a good one.